The Big Ideas platform is a thought leadership initiative that's been developed by the School of Politics, Policy and Governance, which is an unconventional school that's designed to attract, develop and also produce a new generation of political leaders who will listen and serve the new class of citizens who know their rights. The Big Ideas platform aims to promote dialogue, collaboration and action to address the present challenges faced by African communities.
My name's Camry Apollo, and welcome to the Big Ideas Platform podcast. On this episode of the Big Ideas Platform podcast, we will be speaking with Ahmad Salkida, a renowned investigative journalist with over 23 years of experience in conflict and development reporting. He's regarded as one of the foremost experts on the protracted Boko Haram insurgency. He's the founder of Human Angle, a media platform dedicated to providing in-depth reporting on underreported issues across Africa with a focus on conflict, human security, development, as well as humanitarian challenges. Ahmad Salkida's big idea is the intersection of virtual reality with storytelling, and how they can bring stories closer to the audience. It's always a pleasure to sit down and have a conversation with him. Ahmad Salkida, welcome to the Big Ideas Platform podcast.
Welcome, Camry. Welcome. Thank you.
Right, let's jump right in. Now, your work as an investigative journalist who specializes in the areas of conflict as well as development, it's not a common choice for many who look to get into journalism. Many people see the glitzy side of the profession. So talk to us about why you chose to report on conflict and development. What drew you to this type of journalism?
I think for me, it's more of a necessity than just a choice. I happen to come from the northeast Nigeria, Borno, northeast Nigeria, a state that has been ravaged by the Boko Haram insurgency. I witnessed most of the violence firsthand that affected loved ones, former schoolmates, neighbors. I saw the reality before me unfold before my eyes. And as a budding journalist at that time, I noticed that a lot of the reporting had zero or little elements of the impact on victims. Oftentimes, the reporting is focused on the actors, the military and the non-state actors perpetrating the violence. So I think for me, when the opportunity came to start up a media platform, I just felt the best thing would be a platform that would focus on the human cost, the human impact. And that's why the name of the platform itself is Human Angle. The idea is to look at the human angle of conflict, how this conflict affects human beings, especially those in the rural areas. So for me, that was just the reason why I decided to focus on conflict, development, displacement, that is always the ramifications of every conflict. So, and that's why we are Human Angle, and that's why we've been around in the last 4 years, doing nothing but doing investigative reporting, accountability journalism around the conflict and humanitarian environment sectors.
Okay. Now, a lot has happened on your 23-year journey as a journalist, culminating in Human Angle, as you've just laid out to us. In your area of specialization, how would you rate our efforts as a people, as a country, as a government? How would you rate our efforts in conflict management and security in general? Are we gaining ground in this war of insecurity? How would you rate our efforts?
I think the effort is very complex. The dynamics is as fluid as the efforts to contain the conflict. The conflict dynamics are as fluid as the effort to contain it. One government comes with a different type of strategy, and another government comes with its own different strategy. We have not seen sustained efforts by different governments in containing this crisis. We've always seen more of a fire brigade approach, ad hoc approach to these approaches where institutions are not threatened till today. We have very weak institutions. For example, I can give an example with the de-radicalization program. At some point, Boko Haram members were surrendering, and there were programs in place to de-radicalize them. But the government itself became overwhelmed that they could no longer even contain and manage the number of defectors. So there were some defectors on arrival into Nigeria. They would just be asked to go away because there is no funding, there is no structure to absorb them and sustain a holistic approach of de-radicalization. So it tells you the kind of mindset that we have in the security sector. Most of it too is transactional. There is more of focus on getting contracts to buy arms and ammunition than a lot of focus on strategy itself. And then the kinetic approach, I would say, especially from the Air Force, has been largely successful, but the non-kinetic effort has lacked coordination and with no policy structure to even guide issues around peace building, issues around payments of ransom, to the extent that ransom payment and kidnapping is now the most lucrative industry in Nigeria today, I'm afraid.
Okay, now we are something we share in common is solutions. Your big idea, let's start to come to that now. Your big idea is to combine virtual reality and storytelling, which you say can bring stories closer to the people. Talk to us a bit more about this.
I don't think there's anything that beats innovation in the media. You need to innovate. The dynamics have changed for me and you that have started decades ago. The media landscape has completely changed. Young people's appreciation of the media is changing. They are increasingly mobile, and people no longer have time to watch long-form documentaries and videos on YouTube. We are now in the TikTok era of how news is consumed. What I'm trying to say is we have a very mobile population with a very, very, very fragile or short attention span. And for us, we know that it is difficult to get the attention of these young people to sit down and read long form, either documentaries or print. So what do we do that is new, that would interest them? We started with animation, and that started working for us until when we decided to invest in virtual reality. And I think for us, it's actually, it seems to be working now. It's getting their attention. We are also even venturing into virtual reality games now, where we are going to turn stories of peace building, stories of displacement, stories of solution journalism into games for young people so that they will begin to take an interest in those stories that, whether we like it or not, it's central to our survival as human beings. Without peace and security, there won't be development, there won't be any kind of progress. So we realize in an era of entertainment, in an era of Premier League, in an era where young people are just focused on online games, how do we also leverage on those interests in those areas in also telling very serious stories? And Camry, that's what we have been doing in the past 1 year. Very difficult because, first of all, there is limited funding for such projects, and there's also limited skill. So if you even put out an application for an exam developer, you will get 4 or 5 applications. But if you put out an application for writers, you would get more than 5,000 applications. So that tells you that there is a skill problem that we are also trying to address before we can also benefit fully with this innovation. So we are doing a lot of mentorship to see how we can get even young people to take an interest in the field, to study it, and then come back to give back to society. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, yes, you have. Most interestingly as well is the fact that we are competing. That is, journalism is competing with so many other things that commands the attention of a very youthful and mobile population. So it's very, very good to see how far you've come in developing this platform. Right, we will take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll pick up the conversation where I'll be asking Mr. Salkida about the advantages that virtual reality has in storytelling over traditional mediums. All of this when the Big Ideas Platform podcast returns.
The Big Ideas Platform is a thought leadership initiative that's been developed by the School of Politics, Policy and Governance, which is an unconventional school that's designed to attract, develop and also produce a new generation of political leaders who will listen and serve the new class of citizens who know their rights. The Big Ideas Platform aims to promote dialogue, collaboration and action to address the present challenges faced by African communities.
You're welcome back to the Big Ideas Platform podcast. My name is Camry Apollo, and I'm here in conversation with Ahmad Salkida, whose big idea is the intersection of virtual reality with storytelling and how they can bring stories closer to the audience. He's spoken to us about how he ventured or how he ended up in conflict reporting and development journalism. He says it was a matter of necessity because that was his reality in the northeastern part of the country at that time. And he says the real crux of the hardship that's been borne by people was underreported. And this saw him as a then budding journalist venture into that area. His career spanned over 2 decades, and the result is what we are discussing today, the intersection of virtual reality and storytelling to bring stories closer to the people. So, Mr. Salkida, let's come back to it. The question now is, what advantage does virtual reality have in storytelling over traditional media?
I think I would say probably the best treatment for lack of attention, because if you bring young people in a hall, they are often distracted with their phones, with their mobile phones, with their gadgets, and even if it's in a lecture room, even if it's in a workshop or anything, they are always distracted with their mobile phone. You can't stop young people from using their mobile phone at each given time. And for people that are older, like me and you, we are also grappling with the economic downturn, how to keep family afloat, so I think there's one form of distraction or the other for every generation. And when you put on the virtual reality headset, you are completely lost. You are completely lost into that world of metaverse. You won't even see the person with you in the same room that you're in the same room with. You can't use your phone. You can't use anything. The moment the headset gets into you, you are completely there in that world. So it gives you, it helps to it brings 100% attention to that story, because we transport you, for example, to an IDP camp, and you see yourself in that IDP camp virtually as if you are there, as if you are an eyewitness. You could also feel seem as if you're touching the people that you are learning about. So I think it helps with attention. It helps with it creates that focus that we need people to have to understand an issue, to appreciate, to immerse into that issue. And it drives empathy because you could see, like one of our stories, a day in the life of an IDP camp. It's six, 6 minutes, barely 6 minutes. And in just 6 minutes, you would be transported to an IDP camp in Maiduguri, where and how they sleep, how they wake up. And when you remove their headset, you could just think that you, that's me. I just slept and I just woke up, I just ate. And I think that helps in sending a stronger message than someone reading a text from a newspaper or from a website trying to describe a story. So for us, it's and it appeals to young people. It's a new technology. Young people are curious, and then we're buying into that curiosity, and then we're trying to use it for good, for things that they would be able to understand what other people are facing. And these places are places that are unreachable because of security reasons. But we would be taking you to an IDP camp in far east, northeast, or northwest without you having to take the trouble of traveling and risk being abducted or killed by violent crime criminals.
Okay. Now, earlier on, you mentioned cost funding being a challenge, which brings me to my next question. Given the cost, how accessible will virtual reality be to the audience that you wish to bring your stories to?
I think the technology is relatively expensive all over the world, but just like every other technology, it starts like this. When the mobile phone came, it was very expensive, but today it is super accessible. So for us in this part of the world, we did not want to wait until the Asians and the Europeans have built the technology before we jump into it. We decided to jump into it right at the same time when Asians, the Americans are trying to figure out virtual reality. We want to be part of the process of building this technology rather than the old tradition of waiting until it's all ready, it's all available before we start. We don't want to take the back seat. We, as Human Angle, want to be in the front seat. And that's why we are the first media house in this on this continent that has done quite significant storytelling on this. And we are also using it for the management of mental health. So we have also deployed virtual reality for the treatment of mental health with our mental health professionals that work with Human Angle full time. And we have seen it being used for meditation, for trauma care. And it's just so appealing for every young person that has interacted with it. Now, how many headsets do we have? We have over a dozen of headsets. We go to school to tell young people about virtual reality. We do exhibitions like the one we did for the big ideas. We just did the Human Angle showcase where your colleagues were there and they interacted with our headsets. And from anywhere in the world, if you go to Human Angle YouTube VR, you could see our content. And if you have any headset anywhere you are in the world, you can be able to interact with those content.
We're very, very happy to have your organization being there in the forefront, because basically we all live and work in the same space, the African space, the Nigerian space. So I think that's a very, very good one. Now, we've talked about young people quite a lot because they constitute the greater part of the population. So what advice would you give to other journalists, especially young ones across the continent who wish to explore your big idea of virtual reality and storytelling? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, so for me, I think as a media entrepreneur who manages over 30 plus members of my team, I think what I always tell you young journalists is content creators, as professional journalists, is credibility, especially in this era of misinformation and disinformation, this era of fake news. So I think it's really important. And it's also important for us to ensure that we are as fruitful as possible, and also to also understand that the entire media ecosystem is evolving so fast, and in order not to be left behind, you have to adapt. The best way to adapt is to constantly develop yourself, constantly learn, and that's the only way we can remain relevant and compete with our peers all over the world.
Truth is the currency, indeed. Truth, accuracy is the currency. Speaking about the disruptive elements of technology, I consider it to be a double-edged sword. In the hands of human angle, it's a tool to be used to deepen the work you do, to bring it closer to people. In the hands, however, of some unscrupulous elements, it's a tool for creating chaos, to misinform, to disinform, and so on and so forth. How or what would you say to people who ask the question, how can I tell if what I see is real or not? How do we authenticate the information that we are bombarded with online? How can we tell what's real, what's not, what is true, what is not?
What works for me and what works for my organization is you can only control what's in your hands. And once it gets out, you can't even control if people believe it or not. So you must have credibility and a track record. And for us, fact checking is not just about fact checking disinformation out there. In Human Angle, we have an internal fact check process where we fact check ourselves, our story. We have zero tolerance for disinformation. We have zero tolerance for plagiarism. We have never received a single litigation or even a letter from a lawyer to retract the story. And this is because we are not in a rush to tell the stories. We are only interested in verifying the stories before it goes out there. And I think over time, people will begin to trust you. Over time, people will begin to, and when that trust is there, you would set yourself as apart. And that's the only thing we can control, our own team. How do we fact check ourselves? But I don't think you can control how people would perceive your news. You can't control what people would think is truthful or not. But the silver lining is consistency in credibility, consistency in accuracy.
Now, let me go back to where it all began for you as a young journalist, the Northeast. The Northeast has arguably been classified as the least developed part of Nigeria. Do you believe your big idea of approaching storytelling using virtual reality, do you believe it can bring about positive change in, for example, places like the Northeast and its level of development?
Our duty as journalists is to be able to tell difficult, challenging stories, especially underreported stories, and that's what we have been doing. And there's very little we could do. Our work, for example, on the NIFA women, a group of women that advocated for the release of their husbands that were arbitrarily detained by the Nigerian army, led to the release of over 1,000 of these men. But there's really nothing we could do to support them, to support their own families. The only thing we could do is to bring their stories to light, which led to their release. And that's why I believe that the civil society needs to work together more closely and then adapt the marathon race effect, where when the journalists report underreported stories, difficult stories, let other members of the civil society pick it up to do advocacy, to ensure justice, to do other components that we journalists cannot just do it all. And for us, it is just to tell difficult stories, underreported stories.
As we wind up now, let me ask you, what legacy would you like to leave in the world of journalism?
I think for me, I think I've left the legacy already. I think I came at a point where every single one said it's not possible. And I think I was able to demonstrate that it's possible. The first thing, I have no formal education. I'm an autodidact. I've never had, I've never went to school. And then people felt that from the Northeast, that I come from a place that's one of the least developed, least educated. Yes, we cannot do anything. I can say today I have one of the best newsrooms on the continent, and I'm so proud that we've been able to achieve that. And I hope we will get the kind of support that we deserve, we truly deserve from the audience, for us to remain alive for as long as possible to continue the public interest journalism that we are currently doing. So for me, that's the legacy already.
I would also like to add a little bit to that because you have a very solid reputation, not just in the industry, but nationally as well. The Boko Haram situation is one that no country can ever plan for. And Nigeria, given our size, our population, things tend to be scaled up. If we are happy, it's a big thing. If we are sad, it's also a big thing because of our sheer numbers, people suffering, the number of displacements and murder and so on. For that, I salute you, as do many of the people who will be watching this. I'm certain of it. Let's hope the Lord God Almighty preserves us. As you say so, we continue doing what we're doing. Now, as we wrap it up, a number of people will follow this conversation. People who are basically innovators, idea generators, policymakers, members of the public. They will follow this conversation. I'd like to call on you now to make a statement to them or make a request to them, whichever you choose, that you would like to see spur them into action in line with what you are doing and your big idea.
I think my appeal is for our audience to do more for the kind of journalism that not only Human Angle do, but organizations like Radio Now, Data Fight, and some very good social entrepreneurship, should I say, media and social entrepreneurship organizations. We are doing a lot of work around accountability. We're doing a lot of work to change how governance is done and how governance is built. And we need the support of our audiences. The media is far more developed in places like Kenya, in places like South Africa, than even here in Nigeria. And we are the so-called giant of Africa. So we need Nigerians to support the work that we do. And I think that's the only way where we can have a better informed society that would not give in to electoral thefts and electoral fraud every 4 years that continue to take our country back.
Well said. Can we ask you to also give out your social media handles where people could get in touch with you who are interested in exploring not just your profession, but especially your bigger idea?
Yes, so we are Human Angle, as I'm sure you're going to see on the screen. And then you can follow us on all social media platforms and visit our website, www.humananglemedia.com, and get to know stories from ungoverned spaces in our country through our platform.
Thank you so much. That was our conversation with Ahmad Salkida, a journalist who's an expert in reporting conflicts. He focuses on development journalism, and he's the founder of Human Angle.